Hello and welcome to You're on Mute. I'm Natalie Billingham, EMEA MD for Akamai, and I'm delighted to welcome today Dr. Anne-Marie Emafidon MBE. Anne-Marie was a child prodigy who, at the age of 20, received her master's at Oxford University in computing and maths. From there, she went on to have a glittering career in academia, technology, and investment banking. In 2012, Anne-Marie co-founded Stemettes in order to encourage participation of girls within the science and technology industry. Since then, over 50,000 girls across Europe and the UK have been helped and supported by Stemettes. The Akamai Foundation is a proud supporter of Stemettes, and in 2021, the EMEA Women's Forum at Akamai has selected Stemettes as the charity of our choice. So welcome to Anne-Marie. The topic that we're going to discuss today is one that has been discussed at length, which is how to encourage greater participation from females within the technology industry, how to create a more diverse and inclusive workplace, and how to future-proof that. And particularly coming out of the pandemic, how do we ensure that women can work in industries where they're underrepresented, no matter what the circumstances? So we've been talking about and working towards increasing the number of women in the industry for many years now. And, we've made some progress here at Akamai. We've made some progress, although we're certainly striving to do more and to do better. But when you look at the average technology company, then the numbers of women, particularly in technical roles, remain stubbornly low. Why do you think that is?
It's a problem of attraction and it's a problem of retention. And I think that's kind of it in a nutshell, right? We've had a lot of talk about this. We've had a lot of research done into it, and all of it points to who wants to come in, who's coming in, and how long are they staying? Are they being promoted? How are they being, held in the industry and appreciated in the industry?
I'm with you on that. And I think we certainly need to maintain our energies high. And actually, one of the discussion points is around, there are all these different areas to ID&E, however, whatever configuration of those letters you'd like to put them in. And so how do we balance the attention across all of these different areas that merit attention, within the piece?
I think it's not a binary, right? So it's not we either look at gender or we don't, or we look at race or we don't, or we look at disabilities or we don't. I think it's something where, being intentional about just looking for difference, I think is the easiest way from where I'm sat about considering this and balancing this up, right? It's a highly important thing. It's as important as making profit is ensuring you've got the right people to help you make that profit and the right people to profit from, I guess, if we're going to, use that type of terminology in a business scenario. And so I think it's having it as a priority and saying we're going to intentionally be inclusive rather than unintentionally be exclusive means that it is something that if you are constantly looking for that difference, if you're valuing difference, if you know the value for you as a business, but also for you as a human being that wants to do the right thing, the value of having that difference, celebrating that difference, including it in what you're developing. Once you're inclusive in one way, if you're already now considering that women the difference, the multitude of women that you might have in your organization, that means that it's going to be much easier for you to consider the multitude of ethnicities or the multitude of languages or the multitude of disabilities that you want to consider.
Yeah, and that's a great point. I love that idea of intentionally sort of building the muscle that you need in these areas, and then that will begin to sort of serve itself. So, one of the things that you touched on, though, was around attraction and retention, specifically about women in the industry. And, focusing on the retention element, once we get women into this technical sphere, it's so critical to keep them. And what we've seen across the pandemic is not something that's new, but something that's really been highlighted around, the additional responsibilities that women may have outside of work and the role that they play in their ability to stay in the role, to stay in the industry. And so what advice or thoughts or guidance would you give for businesses, post-pandemic, who are thinking about how to handle this?
My kind of guiding principle for organizations and businesses is, let's go to post-lockdown, let's go to post-pandemic, let's not go back to normal, let's go forward, right? And so I think, taking the things that we have learned from the last year or so, taking the good bits of that, the highlights, the things that we never thought were going to be possible but are possible, taking those bits, those tidbits, those things that have worked that we weren't able to experiment with before, rolling them into what happens next, but also preparing your organization. How do you manage for difference? How do you manage for folks that are in different places? How do you manage emotionally for you as a manager, right? In terms of how you keep tabs with folks, right? How do you ensure that we can then build that difference into our policies, build that in going forward, and ensure that we are looking at the wider kind of set of life that our employees are working in?
And the question I get asked most frequently, actually, by men in my team or across the organisation, is that I want to support. How can I best be an ally? So, what would you tell them?
What I'd say to the men is, listen, believe the women in your organisation. There's a lot already happening, which is why we don't have the retention. There's a lot that's happening, which is why we have things like the Women's Network, why a safe space is needed versus the space that isn't necessarily always safe. And so I think it's going to be really important for men to listen, believe what you've heard, and then go and act on it. And it's something where, your culture is the average of the actions of the folks that you have, right? Pull that average in the right direction.
Yeah, I think that sort of action, I love your comment there about your culture being the average of our actions. I think the point that you're making around intentionality across the board is so critical as well. I mean, there's some fantastic areas that people can take away from this and really sort of noodle on and then apply as we go forward. So I thank you so much, Anne-Marie, for joining us. There's just been a ton of useful discussion there that we can all turn into action. So again, really appreciate your time. Thanks for joining us. Thanks for you who view us enjoy it. And if you've enjoyed it, then feel free to share and pass on, as always, because you can unmute yourself at any time. Thank you.